The lights of the auditorium were still warming up, casting a soft haze across the stage. And as the audience settled into their seats, a quiet sense of anticipation lingered in the air. The kind that makes people lean forward, without even thinking. The kind that makes everyone wonder what kind of moment they are about to witness. And in that atmosphere of half-held breaths and whispered conversations, a single figure slowly emerged from the shadows of backstage, a Filipino contestant named Marco, a man who had grown up thousands of miles away, carrying nothing but a dream, a worn pair of shoes, and a voice that had been shaped by years of singing in cramped living rooms, crowded karaoke bars, and the echoing chambers of childhood memories. He stepped into the light with the uncertainty of someone who had never stood on a stage this large before. Yet he also carried a quiet strength, the kind that comes from knowing that this moment might change everything, even if only for a few minutes. He reached the center of the stage, while the judges looked up, waiting to see who he was and what he had come here to do, and the whole room grew strangely, beautifully still. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his expression unreadable, the way he always did when he sensed that something unexpected was about to happen, and Marco took a deep breath, trying to calm the trembling in his hands, remembering all the struggles that led him here. The nights when electricity cut out in the neighborhood and he would sing by candlelight because music was the only thing he truly had. The days when people told him that dreams like this were too big for someone like him. Yet he kept singing anyway, kept practicing, kept believing, in a voice that sometimes felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone braver, someone stronger. Now standing under the blinding stage lights, he introduced himself softly, almost shyly, his voice carrying a gentle accent. That made him sound familiar and real, and when he said the name of the song he was about to sing, there was a sudden ripple through the audience. Because choosing an Elvis classic was never simple. It was a challenge, a responsibility, almost an act of courage, and Marco knew it well. As the music began, a gentle hum flowing through the speakers, like a memory returning, Marco closed his eyes for a second, grounding himself, telling his heart to slow down. And as the first note left his lips, something shifted in the room, a deep, almost invisible pull that made people instinctively raise their heads, as if someone had opened a door to a different time. His voice wasn't an imitation. It wasn't a forced attempt to copy a legend. It was something more subtle, a natural echo, warm and sincere, shaped by the way Elvis songs had lived in his home. Played on old radios, sung during weekend gatherings where the adults would laugh and dance and the children would pretend to be stars. And in that moment, with all those memories swirling through him, the sound that came out felt both new and nostalgic, soft yet powerful, trembling yet confident. And the judges, even Simon, were visibly surprised. The audience stared, some with their hands over their mouths, feeling the emotion in his tone, the softness followed by sudden strength, the tenderness that wrapped itself around each lyric. And Marco's voice carried a raw honesty that made people forget where they were, as if the lights had dimmed, the crowds had faded, and only the music remained. Echoing like a heartbeat, he sang, with a depth that could only come from a lifetime of holding on to hope even when life felt heavy. From moments when he stood by a window, watching rain fall and wondering if he'd ever reach a stage like this. From nights when he worked long hours just to help his family, while still dreaming of a world where music might finally choose him back. And as he opened his eyes midway through the song, he saw people leaning forward, eyes shining, caught in the story he was unraveling. With every note, Simon's expression softened, shifting from curiosity to genuine astonishment, because there was something undeniably special in the way Marco breathed life into a song that belonged to another era, yet made it feel alive again, made it feel personal. And as the melody rose into its most emotional part, Marco didn't hold back. He let his voice expand, filling the room, carrying decades of longing, pride, and gratitude in each sustained note. And the audience felt it. They felt the journey in his voice, the miles he had traveled, the sacrifices made, the belief carried in his suitcase like a fragile treasure. And somewhere in the middle of all that music, someone in the crowd began to cry, not because the song was sad, but because it was real, because talent like this reminded people of dreams they once had too, dreams they might have forgotten. By the final verse, silence filled the entire auditorium, but it was the kind of silence that only exists when people are holding emotion in their throats, waiting, hoping, almost afraid to blink. And Marco, with a slight quiver in his voice. Finished the last line in a tone so tender, it felt like the ending of a movie. The type of moment that makes time slow down, just enough for the heart to catch up. And when he let the microphone fall back to his side, there was a strange, weightless pause, a suspended second where no one knew what to do, as if the air itself was still listening, still absorbing what had just happened. Then suddenly the room erupted, applause bursting like a wave, people rising to their feet, with an energy that filled the entire hall, cheering, clapping, crying, overwhelmed by a performance they hadn't expected from the quiet man who walked onto the stage. Marco stood still, breathless, eyes glistening under the lights, unable to fully process what he was seeing, because for so long he had imagined this moment in the privacy of his mind, watching others receive standing ovations, wondering if he'd ever be worthy of one. And now here he was, wrapped in the noise of 1,000 people who believed in him, who felt his voice reach into them, tug at their hearts, and give them something unforgettable. And when the applause finally softened, Simon leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slightly in disbelief, before leaning forward with that rare tone he used when he spoke, from genuine admiration. And he told Marco that he had walked in as a stranger, but had just become someone the world would remember. Someone who brought a legend's spirit back, without copying it. Someone who showed not just talent, but soul. Marco's tears finally slipped free, shining under the lights, but they weren't tears of fear or nervousness anymore. They were tears of relief, of validation of the realization that all the hardships, all the doubts, all the nights he wondered if he should give up, had led him to this single moment. And the judges continued praising him, each in their own way acknowledging not just the voice, but the emotion, the authenticity, the humility he brought with him. And when Simon pressed the button that sent gold confetti bursting across the stage, the audience screamed even louder, the golden rain cascading around Marco, like a celebration of every dream he had ever held. Close, and he stood there overwhelmed, letting the confetti touch his skin like tiny pieces of light. As the camera zoomed in closer, capturing the raw emotion on his face, Marco remembered his mother's voice, telling him as a child that music was a gift he shouldn't hide. Remembered his father lifting him onto a chair so he could sing for visiting relatives. Remembered the neighbors who joked that he sounded more like Elvis than Elvis. Himself remembered every person who had encouraged him, every setback that had shaped him, every quiet prayer whispered before sleep. And now standing under golden lights, with thousands watching in person and millions watching from home, those memories wrapped around him like a warm embrace, grounding him, reminding him that this moment wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who had believed in him, when he couldn't believe in himself. Even after leaving the stage, Marco could still hear the applause echoing behind him, faint but powerful. And as he walked down the hallway backstage, the gold confetti still clinging to his clothes, he felt a sense of peace he had never felt before. A sense that all the years of self-doubt had finally lifted, replaced by a deep, quiet certainty that he had finally stepped into the life he was meant to live. He smiled softly, touching his chest where his heart beat wildly, filled with joy and disbelief, and his crew members congratulated him. He kept bowing, thanking them, unable to stop smiling, unable to stop feeling the warmth of a moment he knew he would carry forever. The story of his performance spread quickly, traveling across social media like wildfire. People sharing clips, reacting, crying, laughing, celebrating a talent they felt proud of, even if they didn't know him personally. Especially viewers from the Philippines, who flooded the comments with messages of love and pride, calling him a reminder that Filipino talent shines anywhere in the world. And as Marco watched some of these reactions, later that night he felt humbled, honored, and deeply moved, thinking about how music had connected strangers across oceans, how his voice had become a bridge between cultures, how a simple audition had blossomed into something far greater than he ever expected. As days passed, Marco returned to rehearsals, carrying with him a renewed sense of purpose, determined not just to compete but to grow, to push himself to represent his roots with pride. And every time he stepped into the rehearsal room, he remembered the audience rising to their feet, remembered Simon's rare look of astonishment, remembered the feeling of golden confetti falling around him, and he let those memories fuel him and inspire him to give even more, to sing with the same heart that had moved so many people. Because he understood now that his voice was no longer just a dream. It was a responsibility, a gift he was meant to share. And though he knew the competition would get tougher, the stages brighter and the expectations higher, he walked forward with a quiet confidence, knowing that whatever happened next, he had already created a moment that touched the world, a moment that reminded people of the power of music, the beauty of dreams, and the simple truth that voices like his, voices filled with sincerity, courage, and culture could rise from anywhere. Even from the most unexpected corners of life, he held that truth close, carrying it with him, like a melody that would never fade, stepping boldly into the next chapter of a journey he once thought was impossible. Now knowing that sometimes all it takes is one voice, one dream, and one unforgettable moment to change everything.